Okay, so now before we get started, I needed to drop two disclaimers. I didn't get the chance to record yesterday because I had to work. That's on me. The second disclaimer is the Godzilla 2 King of the Monsters OST video is no longer on my channel because the stupid content ID system was updated to screw me over. Not just me, but other people over. God, I hate that so much. Can you now see why I stopped doing that? Because of that. I stopped doing it because of that reason. So now you know. So if you didn't get to see the video, I apologize. It was completely out of my hands. And it's also funny because my first video, the Shin Godzilla OST video, is still up and can be viewed elsewhere, but not in the US. Where's the logic in that? And also, welcome to YouTube.com, where we take down your most popular video, even though it's fair use, and demonetize your channel because of reasons. That's YouTube in a nutshell. Word of advice, create your own piece of content. Anyway, on to the episode. As I write this, and as the recording of this episode, the trailer for Godzilla vs. Kong 2020 has not made its way online yet. So, I decided to take this opportunity to talk about the original meetup. Sci-fi's two biggest icons at the time going at it against each other. Well, technically Godzilla was just getting up there in popularity while Kong was already up there. But hey, at least it was in it giving the big G a rub and putting him over. But did you know that it almost never came to be? Who knew? Well, I'm about to tell you about that because welcome back or welcome to this episode of the Brumakian podcast. This is episode 6 for the World Heavyweight Championship. And I'm your host, Demetrius, and I'll be your play-by-play guy, your commentary for this episode, sort of, for this match and the movie. Crossovers are very, very common nowadays, but back then, I bet it was revolutionary. I should know this since I'm literally in the 1960s, without any way of getting back to my own time period. Anyway, before Marvel did the whole crossover craze that was literally blowing up right now, Universal's Monsters was already doing that. Frankenstein meets Wolf. Let me say it again. Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, the House of Frankenstein, and others on the big highlights. And the trend literally continued in the 1950s into the 1960s. And yes, as you heard, this movie was almost not to be. Willis O'Brien, the guy that made stop motion animation amazing again, came up with an idea to create King Kong meets Frankenstein. Yeah, that sounds like the best idea in the world. Although, can you imagine if it actually happened? That'll be some fight. Anyway, where it would take place in San Francisco, why not LA? Has there ever been a monster movie that takes place in LA? I would love to know that. But realizing that the name Frankenstein is owned by Universal, he renamed it to King Kong versus the Ginkgo, whatever that means, and brought the idea over to a gentleman named John Beck, who promised him that a studio would make the film. I wonder who that would be. Daae, probably. He then took the studio to George W. Yates, to flesh out the screenplay, who then retitled it to King Kong vs. Prometheus, the original concept for Frankenstein. You still following me? Also, Prometheus Frankenstein, that sounds so weird. It just sounds weird to me. But realizing that every single studio at the time won't do it because the stop motion animations costs are, to put it bluntly, in short for ridiculous, Beck got the attention of Toho, who were just begging to make a Kong film. So when they purchased the script, they got a man named Shinichi Sekizawa to rewrite the story and threw out Frankenstein and put Godzilla in it. I'm just waiting for that to become a meme, by the way. Hey, you know how to make your story better? Put Godzilla in it. There we go. However, the idea was not well liked by everyone. Marion C. Cooper, who published the original King Kong novel back in 1932, wrote to his friend Douglas Burden, saying how disgusted he was at the production of the film. Why do I taste salt in this man's wounds? Ooh, Betty. Ooh, too much salt. He's getting too much salt in his wounds. Anyway, he then filed a lawsuit against this film for the use of King Kong in 1933 and failed. Yeah, dude, by 2019 standards, King Kong is in the public domain. I am not even going to go into that whole debacle. I'm gonna put a video's link into the description below. This video happened in 2015, and it will explain everything and why Kong is in the public domain and not owned by Universal, as a lot of people would assume. He's not owned by them. He's not. I don't know where I don't know where they got that from. I don't know where they got that idea. No idea. How many times I said idea? Anyway. Nevertheless, the end result is what the Japanese and American audiences witnessed on August 11, 1962 in Japan and June 26, 1963 in the US. Now, believe it or not, as of 2019, this movie remains the highest attended film in the franchise. How is that possible? Selling over 12.55 million tickets in Japan, and understandably so. Hey, if I saw Kong and Godzilla together on the poster, I'd be like, shut up and take my money and give me all them tickets. Why do I feel like that's foreshadowing for something? I can't think of it at the top of my head. Now, interestingly, I will be reviewing the American version because that's the only version that I have in my collection. Because I couldn't be bothered to get the Japanese version because, 1, money, 2, storage space. But before that, I need to take a 2-minute break. This is something you might get used to throughout the duration of this show. It helps me so I don't have to burn my throat every time I do a review like this. And it's a nice change of pace, too. But don't worry, there will be music in the background, such as the one you're about to listen to. Shakedown by Jules Gaia. We'll be right back after these messages. Okay, so how can I explain the story in a nutshell? Well, it basically goes like this. An opening that introduces the main English guy who is basically like a news reporter for the CNN, only in the UN. And it cuts to the original movie, where a guy believes that the red berries that he found were being consumed by a giant god, but the others think he's completely crazy. Guys, have you not been paying attention for the past 5 years? No. The past 5 to 7 years? I believe it would be common knowledge at this point that a giant monster can appear out of nowhere. Speaking of that, after a submarine crashes into an iceberg that just happened to have Godzilla inside of it, the monster itself escapes and is at large in Japan, become the most wanted. That sounds like an interesting episode on the show, The Most Wanted. Japan edition. Japanese giant monster edition. Now that is interesting. I would love to see that. So anyway, the guy, furious that Godzilla is getting more publicity than his company, decides to send 3 schmucks to the island to retrieve the god. Unfortunately for them, the natives do not like this idea and tell them to GTFO. But the natives are convinced to let them stay after being offered smokes and a music box. How quaint. How interesting that a civilization that doesn't need electricity is suddenly consumed by, a music box and a pack of cigarettes. What in the world has this world come to? Meanwhile, back in the land of Japan, didn't mean for that to rhyme, Godzilla decided to take a tour en route to Tokyo. Maybe he just want to see how Japan has progressed for the past 7 years. He's missing some stuff. He needs to catch things up, man. He needs to catch up the speed of what's been happening. And apparently, everything has happened throughout the 7 years that he's been buried under ice, including the train system that has not improved a lot. Speaking of trains, it just happened to come across Godzilla en route to Hokkaido. Why are trains in monster movies the weakest, weakest victim in this franchise? I don't get it. What is the deal with the trains? Sooner or later, these trains are going to get their revenge. I promise you, they are going to get their revenge. And I'm sure it will not happen in a few decades. I'm sure it will not happen. Anyway, let me take a swig of my water for a minute and let me continue. Meanwhile, back on Faroe Island, a giant octopus of all things attacks the village. And after many attempts to stop the octopus failed, a giant ape appears over the man-made wall and sends the octopus packing. Fun fact, four octopi were used during the scene. 3 of them were released, but 1 was eaten by E.G. Tsuburaya, the special effects guy. Hey, how you like the octopus? Boiled or fried? The choice is yours. And now, in celebration of his victory, the giant ape decides to drink the red berry juice right at his feet. But upon drinking them, he falls in a narcoleptic state and falls asleep. This is what happens when you drink and eat too much, people. You fall victim to narcolepsy. A disorder that I actually have, and I'm not proud of it. Seeing the opportunity, the people on the island decides to put Kong on a raft to take him back to Japan. Unfortunately, the JSDF decides, no. We ain't having a giant ape that you call King Kong. We ain't having Kong with Godzilla. No. You can take that monkey back to his island, please. Thank you. But there's an issue. Kong starts to wake up. And because he's starting to wake up, no, let me rephrase. Let's go back a few scenes. Apparently, on the raft, there is a few sticks of dynamite that if Kong wakes up, they will be forced to blow up the dynamite. At first, it doesn't blow up. Whoever started setting up a dud setup is an idiot. You should have double-checked the equipment. That's your fault on that end. So the second option is to shoot the dynamite, and it works, and it blew up the raft. But unfortunately, it did not destroy Kong. Furious and all wet, Kong makes landfall in Japan. Meanwhile, Godzilla continues his tour. Upon doing so, he comes across as Kong. And this is how the first confrontation goes, like this. Roaring at each other, atomic breath, 2 boulders, atomic breath, Godzilla is the victor, and Kong, completely defeated, confused, walks away, and Godzilla walks away. And there you go, that's the confrontation in a nutshell. Wow, nice build up to that confrontation, Jesus Christ. So now the Godzilla tour continues, but unfortunately, before he even touches Tokyo, he's stopped by high tension wires and just walks off to the other direction. A few seconds later, Kong just happened to be in that same area and just charges through without any trouble, and would even go so far as to eat the electricity. How and why? I'm smelling some... What's that word? Shenanigans. After more shenanigans at Tokyo, the main characters decide, you know what? Let's bring these 2 monsters together to have them fight. The next morning, they do just that. And the 2 monsters actually fight, for real, at the base of Mount Fuji. However, the fight ends with both of them falling off a cliff into the ocean. Not even for the both of them to get up before the 10 count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You're out of here. That's it. You're done. Both of you, get out. But then the decision was made for Kong to be the winner. Damn you, shenanigans. Okay. That's the story in a nutshell. When we come back, I, I will give you my thoughts on what I think of the story. Okay, so the story as a whole is a satire of commercials at the time. And while that would be fine for another movie, I don't like it in this movie. Okay, don't get me wrong. I'm okay with a little comedy in a giant monster movie as long as it doesn't overshadow the serious aspects of it. Unfortunately, that's certainly the case for the story here. More comedy with less seriousness. That's the story in a nutshell for me. And while I don't find it bad, I just found it to be a bit disappointing. That's just me. And that's just me. I don't know what I was expecting out of it, but I got something. And like I said, it ain't bad. It's something. Okay, now for the characters. Just like I said in episode 3, the characters are interesting enough to hold my interest. And that goes for the English version with Carter and the others. Unnecessary, but at least they're tolerable. Now, the dub ranges from tolerable to irritating. I cannot tell you how many times I get so irritated and how many times the dub actors completely screw up on the name of Hokkaido. It drove me up a wall. Ugh. Even the Japanese guy in the English scenes was able to say it right. Inconsistency right there. Now, moving on to the special effects. Of course, this wasn't the first film to be in color, but it is the first for both of these monsters. The King Goji suit. Okay, I can see why many people like this design, but for me, it's not my favorite design, but at least it looks good. The Kong suit, however, does not. I don't know about you, but that does not look like an ape. If you take one good look at that suit, you better not tell me that looks like an ape. I know what an ape looks like in real life. Oh, believe me, I seen an ape in real life. Not up close, thankfully. I would have my face pounded in a million pieces. So yeah, that's my thought on the Kong suit and the King Goji suit. Okay, so this is something where it gets interesting. Because I was watching the English version for this movie, I realized that the music used for this version was just stock music from the movie The Creature from the Black Lagoon. And strangely, and yet somehow, it works and fits. Huh? What? How? How in the world do you do that? No idea. No idea how it works. Hey, at least it did its job. But there's only one track from the original soundtrack that actually made it to the English version, and you know what it is. The one with the drums and the villagers are singing. Speaking of, the original soundtrack by Fugabe-san is good, but not memorable. But I'll give it credit. There are a few tracks that would get reworked in later films. Those tracks are Godzilla's Resurrection and King Kong vs. Godzilla 2. Look them up on the soundtrack. They're on YouTube. Okay, moving on to final rating. Okay, overall, I'm going to give King Kong vs. Godzilla 1962 a 75 out of 100. I would recommend it to you for a lonely rent. For both versions. I would rent the film, watch it once or twice, and then move on with your life. And there you go. That's the rating and the review in a nutshell. Dear God, it is 32 minutes and 19 seconds in the recording and counting. This review has gone on too long. I might as well end it. Join me next time when a certain moth returns in an unfair fight. Poor girl. Join me next time when I review Mothra vs. Godzilla from 1964. The first of two movies from 1964. Until then, ladies and gentlemen, dismissed.